Right. Hi, I'm Jeremy Meese, and going to be talking to you about continuous delivery, high-performing engineering teams, and the Holy Grail. We'll go ahead and jump into that now. Um, so software delivery really has never been more critical to the success of business in every industry. It's also never been more complex. The expectations for delivering these high quality software experiences really fast has skyrocketed. The things that we used to do yesterday with the most exceptional product experiences are really expected to be the normal today, but yet also to be more beautiful, intuitive, powerful, and affordable. But the landscape of the tools and platforms and architectures that's constantly evolving. And if you look at this display here of the CNCF landscape, it might be a little bit old now at this point. Like there's a lot out there. There's so many things to choose from. So, with this rapid pace of change and all the available tools and resources and things that are out there and the complexity and all these challenges, how can engineering teams not only succeed, but, beat out the competition? So, like I said, I'm Jeremy Meese. I'm a DevRel community professional. I've been at a number of different companies, most recently at CircleCI, and I've been at Auth0 and Solace and a few others. But I'm DevRel community, and if you're looking for somebody, let me know. But with that, yeah, like I said, we've entered into this period of immense change, and so with the global economic uncertainties that we see that present interesting and challenges, and they're impacting customers of companies and companies of all sizes. And in the midst of all of this, this change, this environment, the stability and reliability themselves have become, increasingly important to businesses globally. The ability to provide, a reliable, stable platform to your customers has become this crucial value metric to engineering teams, and is only going to continue to increase in importance this year. Teams that prioritize robust testing as part of their CI practice can save millions of dollars over time. Forrester did a study a couple years back looking at that and how much value CI/CD platforms can provide to your business. So as CI adoption itself has expanded over the last several years, many teams have had kind of this grow at all costs mentality. But as the complexity of those software systems increased, the cognitive load of having to maintain all of those systems really has become overwhelming for both the devs and the ops sides, which is creating a lot of these situations where teams started to cut corners. We saw, not a lot of, challenges, stability popping up and down. I'm sure we all can mention, can come up with, some things, some companies or online services that, have struggled with maintaining them, their systems and keeping things going. So DevOps teams, you really have to take away some of the complexity and be in a position to help systems recover quickly from the failures that might occur. And so this is why a lot of companies have kind of instituted a platform team. The need for kind of this dedicated team that kind of supports the stability of the applications has become really obvious. And so we'll kind of talk a little bit about that later. Some of you also may be familiar with, some of the industry reports that are out there. You have the State of DevOps report, the State of Cloud Native. The CDF has a State of Continuous Delivery report. These all are great for kind of understanding the industry as a whole, but they don't really give you a good idea of how your team is performing, as they largely are based on self-reported data and the memory of those that are taking the surveys. And they are really great surveys, and they really kind of help to give you a good baseline. But the report I'm going to be kind of going over today of some of the data it's the State of Software Delivery Report, which CircleCI, they started compiling that back in 2019. And is going to be based on anonymized data from their platform and from the report that they released and how they've seen developers and teams working. And this is out of the most recent report, which was earlier this year. There'll be another one, I'm sure, that they'll do coming up. So, but I also, I don't believe in this one size fits all kind of idea around success, because your company and business is not really the same as the person that might be viewing this as well from another computer. Unless you're coworkers, this this really could be really interesting because everybody's different. Every company is different, and so the baselines for one are not going to be the baseline for others. So it's an idea here to really dive into kind of what are the principles around some of these, and look at what the data shows, and then take from there for your business. We'll look at kind of the high-performing benchmarks that are out there for CI/CD, which are duration, mean time to resolve, success rate, and throughput are going to be the four that we'll look at, and kind of look at how those impact and see what some of those baseline benchmarks are for you. We're also going to talk a little bit about the optimization steps that are necessary, sometimes through culture, structure, strategy, that are essential for making sure you're maintaining this key ingredient in achieving developer or achieving success, which is developer happiness. And hopefully it will involve a lot less concussions, as I'm sure these fine gentlemen are experiencing at this moment. So duration, that is the foundation of software engineering velocity. It's this unit of work that we're talking about does not always mean you're deploying something to production. It could just mean you're running some unit tests on a dev branch, but it's the duration of the average time of minutes required to move a unit of work through your pipeline. So it is best viewed as kind of this proxy for how efficient your pipelines are delivering feedback on the health and quality of the code. So the core premise of most software delivery paradigms, from agile to DevOps, is really speed. The velocity, the ability to take in information from customers or stakeholders and respond quickly and effectively. And these rapid feedback and delivery cycles don't just benefit kind of that organization's end users. They're crucial to keeping developers happy, engaged, and in an uninterrupted kind of state of flow, which is where that developer happiness comes in. And you've seen people, the idea of developer experience has really come up. It's been a thing, but it's becoming a bigger conversation now. But we also see kind of this exclusive focus on speed often comes at the expense of stability. It's either, you can choose two of the three things. And so often, speed, the stability is something that we tend to kind of leave at the wayside. But a pipeline that's optimized to deliver unverified changes is really nothing more than a highly efficient way of shipping bugs to your users and driving down your satisfaction with them, and exposing your organization to a lot of unnecessary risk. And so, to be able to move quickly with confidence, you have to have your pipeline guarded against all potential points of failure, and then deliver actionable information that allows you to remediate, any of the flaws that might come up immediately before they reach production. So when we think about like an ideal duration in this case, the benchmark would be, less than or equal to 10-minute builds. We had Paul Duvall in his work in 2007 talked about, that less than 10-minute is a good rule of thumb. Keep your builds at no more than 10 minutes. And many developers, follow the practice of not moving on to the next task until their most recent check-in integrates successfully. And so if you have to wait 30, 40 minutes, an hour, you're really losing a lot of efficiency and really, interrupting that flow. And so you're wanting those builds to not take longer than 10 minutes kind of is that really kind of sweet spot. So in the report that was released, among the workflows observed, 50% completed in 3.3 minutes or less, 75 completed in less than 9. The average duration, though, was approximately about 11 minutes, is what was reported, which does kind of reflect a lot of these longer running workflows. When we look at the 95th percentile was, required 27 minutes or more out of that. But with the benchmark being 5 to 10 minutes, you had a decent amount were kind of in that set. So to improve, to kind of work on these, number one priority is really improving, enhancing your test suites and getting more robust test coverage, that's going to get the best opportunity to improve that performance across all these metrics. And so, while many teams are kind of biasing towards speed instead of testing, it's important um, not to let testing be a second class kind of thought. So these kind of things here, unit integration, and then testing all your layers, test-driven development practices, static dynamic security scans, all of those are important for, really improving your performance. And then kind of balancing speed and test coverage prioritization really has to take kind of that center stage. And so, you've got to really ask the questions like, what features are part of the critical path for the company? Where can you afford to, experiment more and have more risk? And so these kind of things for optimizing pipelines really kind of help you with, buy-in from important stakeholders to get that kind of right balance between test coverage and workflow speed, so you can optimize your pipelines. Teams who are focusing only on speed not only are going to spend more time rolling back all of their broken updates, but they're also going to do a lot of debugging in production. But they're also going to face greater risk, their org's reputation stability. So optimizing, workflow durations means, combining some of those comprehensive test practices with a lot of efficient workflow orchestration. All right, so next here, mean time to recovery. It's that average time required to go from a failed build signal to a successful pipeline run. It's a metric that really is indicative of your team's resilience and ability to respond quickly and effectively to the feedback that you get from your CI system. And it's really going to be that best indicator of how mature your DevOps org is. But the way that users and most organizations see it, nothing's more important than your team's ability to recover from that broken build. Customers really are probably unlikely to notice that steady stream of, kind of small updates that you're doing to their app or their systems, throughout the week. But they're definitely going to notice when something's broken because broken code slipped through the test suite. So it's important to make sure that you are, catching those things that could respond if they do happen to slip through quickly and minimize that impact. Martin Fowler said, the key part of doing continuous build is that the mainline build fails, it has to be fixed right away. Everybody had, kind of all hands on board to fix that. Whole point of working with CI is, you're always developing on a known stable base. So it's really recommended that you aim to fix your broken builds on any branch in under 60 minutes. Now, depending on the scale of your user base and how critical your application is, that target may be significantly lower or higher. But their ability to recover in really under an hour is strongly correlated with a lot of the other metrics that we see. And it's really going to allow your organization to avoid all of those worst outcomes that could happen from having a prolonged failure. Okay. So the data showed that 50% recovered in 64 minutes or less, which was actually down from the previous year, but by about 10 minutes. The top 55 or 25% recovered in 15 minutes or less. And then the top 5% were less than 5. Now, the first step to kind of lowering recovery times is treating your default branch as the lifeblood of your project. And by extension, your organization, your company. So while red builds really are inevitable, getting your code back to green immediately has to be, kind of like I mentioned earlier, has to be like everyone's top priority. With having that kind of culture in place that's always paying attention to that, your organization is going to be poised to leverage the information you're getting from your CI pipeline and fix those failures as soon as they arise. And again, like I said earlier, really lower that risk that might come from a lot of the other errors. Recovery speed really is really bound with pipeline duration. You can't the length of your mean time to resolve, the shortest possible way to get back is going to be the length of your next pipeline run. So all of these techniques here for getting to faster recovery times require some of those other optimizations we talk about before you can really get to faster recovery times. Now, success rate, along with mean time to resolve, is really another indicator of how stable your app dev processes are. But the impact of success rate on customers and developers varies according to a few factors, like was the you know what branch was the failure on? Was it a default branch, or was it a development branch? A development branch, nobody's really going to notice. Did the workflow involve a deployment? If it did, then people now are having more issues. How important is that app or service? So success rate is kind of in that impact is just going to kind of depend some. Uh, but it's important also to know that failed signals aren't really all that bad, or they're just not all bad. A failed signal isn't necessarily indicative of something going wrong, or something that needs to be addressed on a deeper level than your standard recovery processes. It's far more important is to understand your team's ability to take in the signal quickly from the duration and fix that error effectively, which is that mean time to resolve. So, failed workflows that are delivering fast, valuable signals are far more desirable than, a passing workflow with little to no reliable info. Okay. Success rate. The benchmark here is really kind of maintaining about 90% or higher on default branches, which is really a reasonable target from mainline code for a lot of mission critical apps, where your changes should really only be merged after passing a lot of well-written tests. Topic branch failures generally are less disruptive than those occurring on default branch, and it's important for your team to kind of set their own benchmark for success on non-default branches, because that's where a lot of those probably development and trying new things are, and you're not as concerned if things fail there, but you want to make sure that you're improving before you move something on. And so the success rate probably early on isn't as important on a development branch as it would be when you're ready to do your final tests. So back to the data here, success rate, default branch was 77% on average, and 67% on the non-default branches. The trends over the last few years in the report kind of showed the success rates on those default branches pretty much has been steady. Neither of them are really reaching that benchmark of 90. The pattern of seeing non-default branches starting to have higher numbers of failures indicates teams are starting to utilize better and effective branching patterns to isolate a lot of those experimental or test and risky changes from the critical mainline code. So while success rates haven't moved much over, we've seen a lot better practices coming in, and it is a good sign that orgs are starting to kind of prioritize iteration and resilience. And then throughput. It traditionally reflects the number of changes your developers are committing to your code base in any 24-hour period. It's also useful as a measurement of team flow, as it kind of tracks how many units of work are moving through your CI system. When you're performing at or above kind of the recommended levels, throughput puts kind of that continuous in what you hear about continuous delivery. The higher your throughput, the more frequently you're performing work on your application, the more frequently it's getting out to customers. So it's really kind of putting continuous into action. Of course, it's also not going to tell you anything really about the quality of work you're performing. So it is important to consider how rich the data is that you're getting from your test systems, as well as how well you're performing on the other metrics, because it is really only a model. And so success rate and duration, really have to be there to kind of really get a good complete picture on what success looks like. And with duration, a high throughput really doesn't mean anything if you're frequently pushing poor quality code to users. So when we think about what's ideal, it's it is the most subjective to your organization goals. So a large cloud native org actively developing this critical product line, it's going to require far higher levels of throughput than a small team that is maintaining legacy software, or they're kind of doing some niche internal kind of tooling and kind of those types of things. So it really does depend. There's not really this universally applicable throughput target. it needs to be set according to your internal business requirements that you have. So the type of work, resources available, expectations of your users, all play into what the best throughput is for your organization. Far more important than the volume of work you're doing is the quality and impact of that work. So when looking at the data, the median workflow was about 1.5 workflow runs per day. The top 5% were running 7 times per day or more, which wasn't much of a change from previous reports on either of those. Overall, the average project had 2.9, almost 3 pipeline runs, which was a slight uptick from 2.8 in 2022. It's not much. But when you combine that with kind of that sharp decrease in mean time to resolve, it's probably reflecting that teams are committing to smaller, more frequent changes to limit complexity of the outages and achieve faster, more consistent feedback on the state of their applications. Throughput really is also the most dependent on the other metrics. How long your workflows take to complete, how long often they fail, amount of time it takes to recover from a failure, all affect the ability of your developers to focus on the new work and the frequency of their commits. So to improve the throughput, you have to first address all of those underlying factors that can affect their productivity that we talked about earlier in order to bring up your throughput. But it is also kind of this trailing indicator of a lot of the other changes in your processes and environment. Rather than kind of setting this arbitrary throughput goal, it's really important to set up a goal that reflects your business needs. Capture that baseline measurement. Understand, with all of these metrics, capture that baseline. Understand what it is that you're currently working on. Monitor for fluctuations that are indicating change in kind of how your team does work, and then look at the ways that you can adjust so that you're not just randomly setting some goal, arbitrary goal, and say, hey, we're gonna go hit 90% success rate when we got to do that in the next 6 months, and you're like at 10%. Like that's a steep hill to climb. But it's also important, to know that you're not the same as everyone else. You're not going to be doing the thousands of pushes and builds that Amazon does. Unless you're at Amazon, then I guess you are. But it's set that baseline, and then based on what you're currently doing, and then look at the ways you can improve to achieve the different goals. So when we look at the way that all kind of shaped out, this is what it has been over the last few years. And I can't stress enough that when you're measuring, it's important to optimize these metrics. Your teams are going to gain a tremendous advantage over organizations that don't track these key metrics. These are really going to be able to tell you how well you're performing, and be able to continue to optimize those as necessary. So this is where the report is that we went over. It's really, really fascinating. There's previous years you can also look at. Also recommend looking at the state of DevOps reports that are out there as well. The state of continuous delivery. They all have some really fascinating info for you to build off of and kind of see. You can find me I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. I've written a few things on Dev2 and there on Mastodon. Thank you. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And I appreciate you listening.